Good morning to our first episode of Coaches and Coffee, hosted by three former and current high school basketball coaches, where we will pick a topic each week to discuss at length and reach a conclusion of how things have changed in society and sports and any other topic, non-political, of course. For today's episode, we are going to talk about changes in sports, both at the high school and also pro levels. And so welcome to my two former retired older coaches on the call. You're welcome.
Thanks for having us on there this morning. Yeah, I've been retired for how long has it been, Wizard? 6-7 years, something like that? Maybe
easily, 2020.
Yeah, we've been watching our good friend and the host of this show just dominate through Division IV basketball. We're proud of him. He's a good boy.
Yeah, you guys both went out at the same time and, didn't hold up your end of the bargain when it came to dinners and stuff like that. So anyways, I digress and we'll move on. So first topic, first conversation regarding changes in sports and how pro athletes today don't seem to be as tough and as durable as the athletes that we watched growing up in the 80s and 90s, some of you the 70s. But thoughts on this topic of load management? I would start by saying that, they make a lot of money. There's a lot of different medical, technologies today that how can a athlete not participate, in sports, and they set the bar so low with you got to play in 65 games in order to be considered for any end of season awards. That's like playing 4 out of 5 games and saying that's okay. At the high school level, imagine if we had a kid miss every 5th game. So thoughts?
I think one of the main things that I've seen and heard discussed is the fact of the load management and what players from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s did in their careers. And, you'd like to go back and compare, everybody compare. Of course, they compare LeBron to Michael. They compare Bird to Michael, Bird to LeBron. I mean, everything. And when you come down to it, you think about it. If Larry Bird could have or would have played with load management, how much longer would his career have been? And how many more championships would he have won? I always like to think of that question. And the same thing with Michael. Not that he would have stayed any longer, but that's one of the topics that I like to consider.
And my take on this is, I think about this like in real life. I've hired people working in the company that we work for. If I showed up 80% of the time, I would get fired. And I have people nowadays that work for me that call in sick when they just don't feel well. How about we show up, get our paycheck, and play every day? That's my take.
Yeah, very, very valid. It's weird that, we call it the real world, but, in the job force, 80% doesn't cut it, but people that make, millions and millions of dollars, 80% is considered the accepted level of, performance. So we'll see. I think it's going to continue to get, more and more, dragged out, and similar to the other comment of all we're doing is elongating someone's career as opposed to playing, and the fans that have to pay the money to show up to games and they get there and the person they came to see, doesn't even have the decency to play in the game, for one, and then two, how many times do they not even come out and sit on the bench with their team when they're on quote unquote load management? So, but people keep paying the money for the tickets, so they're going to keep doing what they're doing.
And I think Cass's, Wizards comment here, about Larry Bird. And I remember watching Larry Bird lying on the sideline when he was out of the game because of his back pain. But the second that they would look down the bench, Bird would go back in and play throughout the pain. I just think we're not there anymore. And I know that we're all old coaches and we're going to talk about how it was in the old days. But, we equate this even to high school nowadays where, kids can't show up because they have a little cough. And I know that might be COVID and all this other stuff. But, I think we all remember when kids would show up and lie in the bleachers with 103-degree fever, making sure that they were still at practice. God help us, that doesn't happen anymore.
I can think of incidents. I had a player that played pretty much a whole season with a finger that was split right down the middle, and it was just taped together every game so that she could play, and she played. I've had players show up to practices and games where now it would never happen, but they could barely stand up because of the illness or whatever it was, because they so much wanted to play. So, it's tough to compare that because obviously players aren't getting paid in high school yet, and the players in professional players are, and I think it was Charles Barkley spoke of this when he said, people pay good money to watch players play, and they show up to the game. And like Coach Pryor said earlier, the players aren't playing. That's kind of a kick in the teeth as far as I'm concerned, and puts you in your place as far as where you stand in the real world, because it shows that player really could give a shit about you and your wants and needs.
I am thoroughly impressed that we went over 7 minutes before one of us actually swore. So that in itself is an accomplishment on episode 1 today.
Well, I do think that we have a quota. With all of the sponsorship, I do think we have a quota to limit our swearing to nothing more than at least 1 per minute.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's a good ground rule to have. So that means that we all probably shouldn't talk every minute. Is that the suggestion?
It means that we've got 8 more to go right now.
we gotta catch up.
Yeah, we gotta kick it up a bit.
Yeah. All right. The only other thing I would say, how pro athletes differ is, I'm not a big hockey guy, but they're tough as shit. Like they'll take a puck off the teeth and, missing a few chiclets and they're right back out there. And you get some athletes that have a blister on their finger and they can't proceed to play. So
I think to follow that logic is a great thing. And the Wizard was talking about this earlier. Like, we can't compare to high school athletes because they're not paid. I think hockey is paid the least amount of any sport, and they're the ones that show up and take a beating every single day. And we've got pro athletes making $42 million, and they can't make a free throw, but they can take 3 days off because their hangnail is bothering them.
Yeah, or a pitcher that, heaven forbid we throw 100 pitches anymore in a pro baseball game. Let's pull them after 80 so that we can prolong their career, because that definitely seemed to work for people like Nolan Ryan and Greg Maddux. Yeah, just take them out.
I was thinking Nolan Ryan would probably still be able to beat the shit out of any pitcher. Not out pitch him, but probably could still beat the shit out of any one of them today.
Well,
just ask Robin Ventura.
The last point that I will about professional athletes, and it's mainly NBAs and a little bit MLB as far as I'm concerned. the building of the super teams and how that has affected the sport itself, either sport. But, again, you think about it and how it shines upon the high school sport. We still have a little bit of that going on once in a while, and people can say, hey, no, you have some people who won't even talk about it. Then you have some schools that follow the rules, but you have all of this going on. You have kids who play together during the spring in AAU, and they form bonds and friendships, and some of them are really good. And it's the slow process of building these super teams. And it's not something that's just unique to New Hampshire. It happens all over. I listened to a radio station out of Pittsburgh, and they have the same problem with the super team building of players moving from one school district to another just so they can play on these teams. And I think that it's directly being affected by NIL is one of the things now that is a big thing affecting kids. And I think that them seeing professional athletes do what they did, I don't know if it was the first one with that Miami Heat team, but it's still something that occurs.
Oh, couldn't agree with you more, Wizard. We love to give, especially our host friend, a hard time about recruitment and stuff like that. And in fairness, I don't think any of us have ever recruited a kid. But you watch some of these teams that go from not winning a game to winning a state championship in D4, D3, and D2 and giving a good run in D1. And you go, that was a nice job not recruiting. You can't see me with the air quotes. And it did all start with the Miami Heat. It really did. And it's a shame that we're headed that way and taking away from community and development and people showing up to see these local kids play.
Right.
Yeah, completely agree. I think we all have some banter back and forth about, the kids that we've all coached over the years. And, I think we'd all agree that if we picked a top 10 from all three of the teams of teams that we've coached from, that we could probably come up with a pretty good super team over the years. But it was fun to coach against and with, and accept the results that we get. So, all right, well, we could spend another episode on NIL, because how that definitely changed the world. But moving on, I know this is going to be a hot topic for the three of us, but the next topic is entitlement culture. And I'll look at it from a player perspective, or I'll talk about it initially from a player perspective. And today, having coached now for what seems like half of my life, kids that are freshmen and sophomores, and even in some cases eighth graders coming up to play at the varsity level to one, fill a roster, but two, some of them are definitely skilled enough to play at that level. And then I see teams where a kid is a freshman, and because they don't start, whether it's basketball, baseball, softball, all of a sudden they're not interested in being on the team anymore. And that was just never the norm growing up. You were fortunate to make a varsity team as a sophomore, let alone as a freshman. And you develop through the JV programs, which become less and less. And then I think to a certain extent, some of the adults feel that same way, that my kid, looking through those specific glasses that parents sometimes wear, is, yeah, my kid's really good. Why aren't they playing? And a comment that I share with parents over the years, and that I learned from a presenter at UNH one year, and said that, I got it figured out. You want your kid to play with the next four best players. So now that we've got that established, let's move on and figure out what's best for the team, not necessarily what's best for an individual player. So you guys have definitely seen different things when it comes to entitlement, and probably have more examples than the two that I just gave. But would you agree that the culture around entitlement has changed in the last, let's call it, 2 decades?
I was going to let the Wizard go first. He has plenty to say about this, especially since you insulted him and not including seventh graders in that.
And that's a good point, because a lot of these problems can be attributed to in smaller schools, just the fact that there are not enough numbers to play the varsity level, never mind JV level. Fielding JV teams. I've had to field JV teams where I had starters from my varsity team that had to play on those JV teams just so we could have a JV team. But there also becomes a point with these younger kids, and maybe not as much basketball, but you get a sport like soccer or something like that where there's a little bit more running, a lot more physical contact. I dare say there probably shouldn't be that much physical contact in basketball, but we all know that there's a lot of physical contact. But, these younger kids, they're not really physically developed enough to compete at that level. And you have to be very careful when you're bringing up these kids to get them to play. Now, does it mean that these kids are superstars or really good players? Not in some of the cases that I've seen. They've all been sometimes filling a void because we don't have the bodies. Now, occasionally you do deal with that one player coming through the program that is really good and shines, but you still have to be careful. And I think that comes down to the coaching and communication with parents. Now, I'm going to say these days, right now, the biggest problem is parents, from what I've seen and talking to other coaches. So getting parents to look through those glasses of the coaches and not the glasses that are fogged by the love of their child is difficult.
Yeah, and to further that idea and to go back to your concept of the NIL, we now have kids that as, freshmen that don't get a lot of playing time, or better yet, let's say they get enough playing time, 23, 24 minutes a game, but they're not starting, and the parents are going to games at other schools, and all of a sudden they're hearing about how good their kid is, and if they were here that they would get to play more. I mean, we've all seen it. We've all seen it a lot. And they go to this other school and end up realizing that their talent is still at the JV level and don't make varsity, and then are coming back to the school that hosted them originally. And it's creating these incredible disturbances because, as you said, and we could do an entire podcast just on parents. And I know as coaches, we have this idea of parents, and two of us are parents. But we have to understand, as Coach Pryor said at the start of this, that we're doing the best for our team, and this level of entitlement where you can move from one school to the other hoping that your basket will be filled with more goods is just the wrong way to go.
Right.
Yeah, and I wasn't attending to insult the Wizard with not bringing up seventh graders, because probably they started before seventh grade when he was coaching back in the day. And I won't do any name drops of players that, started on his teams and came down and whooped JV teams by dropping 50. But, whatever it took to get a game in, I guess, was all that mattered.
The JV championship, that helps the parents feel better about things when you win the JV championships,
It's all about winning. That's nothing else that we do in sports.
Another episode.
Yes, definitely another episode. Well, I don't know if the entitlement piece changes. I see, more and more, things that are impacting students and athletes, as a segue into the next topic, which is the adults, and then decisions that adults make that impact these kids. And one of the things that we've always preached is the season starts when it starts, it ends when it ends, and we're expected to be there every day as a coaching staff, and hopefully we lead by example with that. And then
I think most of us do lead by example with that. I don't think the Wizard or I have ever had to miss a game. I'm just thinking through on that.
Yeah. I don't ever recall you guys missing a game in the years
Did you ever miss a game? No, well, we digress, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's a valid point. And there's a majority of coaches that never miss a practice, never miss a game. And in my opinion, are good leaders from that standpoint of, showing up is important. And now it seems more and more, not so much in the winter seasons, because people seem to buy into that season more. But when we get into spring sports, there seems to be more and more families leaving on vacation in the middle of the season, which then impacts obviously practices, impacts games if we have any. I've even seen schools stop scheduling games over April break to allow kids to go on vacation. And I'm sure we'll continue deeper into the topic. But as a coach, I think, or as coaches, I think we all felt practice was just as important as a game. And what are we setting for an example if it's okay to miss games or okay to miss practices? And when you return, you either think you're going to be in the starting lineup like you were, or that you're not going to sit a game. Our rule has always been, every practice that's unexcused or every game, it's a half a game suspension. So it definitely happens more and more in spring sports, and I'm sure you guys saw it at the schools you coached at over the years, but I just think it's gotten worse, and we're setting a bad example as adults in the situation, because kids really don't have the choice. If mom and dad say, hey, we're going wherever on vacation and you're coming with us. So any input?
Practice? We're talking about practice?
Yes, AI, we are. And I'm not talking about artificial intelligence either.
Go ahead, Wizard. You chime in on this one. I'll fill it out in the end. Go ahead.
So, again, as we said earlier, we could dedicate one whole episode to probably 3 or 4 episodes talking about parents. But I think one of the biggest things is in regard to what you were referring to, Dale, is the fact that the administration, I think, sets a really good example. If you have a director, which I was very fortunate to have a very prominent and dominant athletic director who set rules, and where there sometimes things made that they were more malleable so people could do the things with their families. And let's remember, as us in Division 4 were dealing with, we were dealing with kids who weren't all going to be going to professional basketball, whether it be WNBA or playing in Europe. There was none of them were going to be playing there. So, that athletic director starts out, the administrator sets the rules that, the contracts we use. I'm sure everybody else probably has the same thing. And it explained it, if you miss this, this, and this. And I think through the years, they've probably become more watered down. Our biggest problem used to be Christmas vacation. So when we had Christmas vacation, obviously it was the holiday, and you had New Year's involved. And some people like to go away, and you would miss the Christmas tournament. And not everybody played in the Christmas tournament. I mean, in regards to other schools, some schools didn't go, but we did. And it was you missed the Christmas tournament. You probably were going to be sitting some games. So we had a lot of kids who did not miss just for the simple fact of sit. And I could give multiple examples, but that tournament was one of the ones that was a big, not a big problem, but it presented some hurdles. And thank goodness, a really good athletic director who did not give in on topic.
Yeah, before Professor jumps in, I think there's a fine line between family and the things that the winter athletes and coaches go through when we have to do, work around Thanksgiving, as you mentioned, Christmas, New Year's, like all those things, and versus just going away because we're just going to go away versus as opposed to, it's holiday. We want to be with family, and we preach, family, academics, basketball in that order. So it's tough to not sound like a hypocrite and say, yeah, you can go, but you're going to, sit the first game back or what have you. I think, there's definitely, a fine line between, family excused absences versus, just, I want to get away, to quote Southwest Airlines, who's one of our top sponsors.
Yeah. Do they even exist anymore?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah, we used to have Spirit as one of our lead sponsors, and Spirit's gone, so I don't know what to do.
We're bringing the Spirit.
Yeah, we are. Your comment, Coach, was perfect about, it's family, and then it's school, and then it's basketball. And I think what parents sometimes forget is that family is team too. And I know that that's putting your team on the top, but when you have a great team, and we've all had, I want to say we've all had great teams and great programs. And the reason that they're great is because we consider those teams family. And I think sometimes people don't put enough priority in the idea of a family team where these kids actually want to be together. They want to be on the bus rides together. We should talk about that at some time too.
Yeah.
Kids don't have to get on the bus anymore. They have any excuse they want to go home. They have any excuse they want to go on a cruise somewhere. I get Christmas. I get Thanksgiving. I get that those are important, and they were important for me to be able to spend the time with my family. But if you're going to commit to the family of your team, you have to commit to it. And I think we're doing a great disservice with everything we've talked about before. The pro culture and entitlement and all of these other things leads directly to where we're existing in a problem with this.
Yeah, I think, the sport that we coached for all the years, it's the longest season, by far, and definitely have our own challenges, with that. But, I think we've both been very fortunate that our athletes, have bought into what we do, and we preach family. And, Professor, you're 100% correct that a team is a family, and sometimes I think the kids get it. I'm not sure always the adults get it, that when they take their kid away, there's that negatively impacts the team, whether it's from a practice standpoint, and now all of a sudden you've got players number 6 and 7 that normally come off your bench. You have to put them into your starting lineup to a role that they're not accustomed to doing, because, players, 2 and 5, went away. But like I said, I really see it more in spring sports, and I get it, where we live, we come out of the winter, and the first thing we want to do is go to warmer weather after some of the dreaded winters. Although the Wizard likes the wilderness, so the cold doesn't bother him.
Absolutely.
Not with his beard / goatee that he sports on a regular basis. He's even got birds eaten out of his hand most days. He's so gifted.
But I'm talking about family, and this is the last thing I'll say about this today. You go to games and with the parents, and the parents who are fans of the team, and then the parents who are fans of their athlete, and you see, do they root for the team or are they just rooting for their child? And I understand people rooting for their children, but are they watching the whole game or are they just watching their child? That's one of the things that I've seen through the years.
And I'm going to continue not on exactly that theme, but the idea of where we all coach at a D4 level, where, as the Wizard had said before, we have to try to figure out how to make these things work. And it's really hard for us when two kids go on a cruise and then we're putting number 6 and 7 in. As you guys know, I had the wonderful opportunity to coach at the D1 level. And at that D1 level, it's funny, those kids, there's so many to choose from that there are really stringent rules on whether you can go away or not. We had one kid that wanted to also do the play, and if she was going to miss more than 3 of our practices, she wasn't going to be allowed to play the sport. And our concession for her, since she was so committed, was to change our practice time some of the time so that she could actually commit. And I think that level of rule structure, as the Wizard was saying before, with an athletic director who just supported him, when there are those rules in place, it takes the pressure off us as coaches and allows us to get the kids at practice, talking about practice again, so that we can make a team. And I think for anybody, all 4 people that might listen to this, if you're going to develop a team, it's important to get that structure, and it just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, this whole thing has been about structure, the NIL, all of it, this whole idea of taking all of the pressure off of us by having a structure that's rigid, and it just doesn't exist anymore. There's another episode.
The more that we continue with this first episode, I think we've created at least a dozen more episodes and I really think you shot for the stars with 4 listeners, Professor. I mean, we just hope that other than the 3 of us go back and listen to our I don't want to call them wild. I just think sometimes honesty is perceived as too hurtful. So we just want to sugarcoat things. So we'll see if we get 4 people that decide to listen to this. But to piggyback off what the Wizard was saying with administration, been very fortunate in my tenure as coach that always had a great administration, athletic director, principals, superintendents that have supported their coaches. I think, you're going to get some parents sometimes, and we read about it more and more, with parents and how they, do some, for lack of a better word, foolish things, because, usually around playing time, even you're seeing things now that parents are jealous of another athlete who's sitting on, or who's not sitting on, who's on your team and is really good, but they don't want to be supportive because that kid's better than their kid. And I think we'll be talking about it for a long, long time, and always said that when coaching isn't fun anymore, then that's when it's time to step away. But the administration have definitely made a big difference and been black and white for the most part over the years. And I think that's helped us as coaches in Division 4. You can see the turnover over the years of coaches that probably didn't have support of their administration, and were let go for one reason or another.
Yep.
Any final topics as we conclude episode 1 for Coaches and Coffee?
I think we've bored our 3 listeners enough.
I think my last comment will be we didn't get enough swears in. We've got to do better at that. And I think that as this continues, since we're 3 old coaches with a lot of experience in time, we're going to probably bash a lot of parents and officials and weak-ass players and all that other kind of stuff. I think we also have to remember that in our coaching career, we have dealt with a lot of amazing parents, amazing officials, and too many weak-ass players.
Absolutely. Hear.
All in favor. Yeah, no, I echo those comments that, for the most part, it's always a small percentage of, people that makes coaches' lives difficult. But I think we've all been very fortunate to see the, parents that are dedicated to our programs, regardless of the role that their kid plays, and truly wants to see success for the kids. So, all right, as we conclude episode 1 and don't have any time to spend listing the sponsors, as we don't have any, but I know Professor's going to be finding us some sponsors before next episode. So, maybe Wizard, the IGA is interested in representing us if you come down off the mountain.
Or at least the local liquor store.
That's awesome. Some people might have to visit that after listening to this 30+ minute rant of 3 wise men. That could have been a great podcast name too, but some people would have questioned the wise, including our wives probably. So,
and we would have probably gotten a whole different group of listeners.
Yeah, that is a true statement. Well, I appreciate the 2 of you joining this morning, and look forward to many more episodes and many more topics. I'll have to go back and listen to this and jot down all the topics that you guys said we could have a full episode or 10 on. So it'll keep us busy. So